The Hindu Kush mountains loomed black against the star-filled Afghan sky. Staff Sergeant Maya Reeves lay perfectly still in her sniper hide, a carefully constructed position among the rocks overlooking the compound below. 800 meters. Close enough to be effective, far enough to be invisible. The digital clock on her watch read 2:47 hours, 13 minutes until the SEALs made their move. "How's it looking, Phantom?" Corporal James Davis whispered beside her, using her call sign. He was her spotter, her eyes when she couldn't see, her brother in all but blood. This was their third deployment together. "Clear as glass," Maya replied, her eye never leaving the scope. "Winds dropped to almost nothing, temperatures steady. If this goes smooth, we'll be boots up by sunrise." Davis chuckled quietly. When does anything go smooth in Kunar province? He had a point. The Kunar province was known as the Valley of Death for good reason. Taliban fighters used these mountains like their personal highway, and they knew every cave, every trail, every hiding spot. But tonight wasn't about them. Tonight was about one man, a Taliban commander who'd orchestrated the bombing of a girls' school in Kabul. Commander Jack "Hawk" Hawkins and his SEAL Team 7 had been hunting him for 3 months. Maya adjusted her position slightly, feeling the familiar weight of her M40A5 sniper rifle. The weapon was an extension of herself. She knew every scratch on its surface, every quirk of its trigger pull. In her 3 years as a Marine Scout sniper, she'd made shots that most men said were impossible. Being a woman in this role meant she had to be twice as good to get half the credit. She'd stopped caring about credit after her first confirmed kill. Results spoke louder than politics. "Phantom, this is Hawk Actual," Commander Hawkins's voice crackled through her earpiece. "We're moving to phase line Alpha. Stay frosty up there." "Copy, Hawk Actual," Maya responded. "You've got clear sight lines. No movement in the compound. Target building is the northeast structure, 2nd floor, 3rd window from the right. Heat signature confirms multiple occupants." "Good work, Phantom. Hawk Actual out." Maya watched through her scope as the SEAL team emerged from the shadows below like wraiths. They moved with the precision of a machine, each man knowing his role, trusting his brothers with his life. Hawkins led from the front. That's what made him legendary. 3 combat deployments, 2 Bronze Stars, and a reputation for bringing his men home alive. "They're at the compound wall," Davis reported, his spotting scope tracking their movement. "Breaching in 3, 2, 1. The explosion of the door breach was a controlled pop in the night. Maya's crosshairs swept the surrounding buildings, searching for threats. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger guard, ready but not eager. Every shot had to count. Every shot had a name, a face, a consequence. "Teams inside," Davis confirmed. "Looking good." But something felt wrong. Maya couldn't explain it, a tightness in her chest, an instinct honed over too many close calls. The compound was too quiet, no defensive fire, no scrambling fighters, just silence. "Davis," she whispered, "something's off." "I feel it too," he admitted. "It's like..." The world exploded. A massive fireball erupted from the target building, a secondary explosion so powerful it seemed to lift the entire structure off its foundation. The shockwave rolled across the valley like a physical thing, a wall of superheated air and destruction. Maya barely had time to register what was happening before it hit her position. The blast wave slammed into the rocky outcrop with the force of a collapsing building. Maya was thrown backward, her rifle torn from her grip. Rocks and debris rained down from above. She heard Davis scream, a sound cut short by a sickening crunch. Then everything went white, her ears ringing with a high-pitched whine that drowned out all other sound. Maya didn't know if she was unconscious for seconds or minutes. When awareness returned, she was on her back, staring up at a sky now obscured by thick smoke and dust. Her head pounded like someone had split it open with an axe. Warm blood trickled down the side of her face. Her left arm burned with pain. She looked down to see a deep laceration running from elbow to wrist, blood soaking through her uniform. "Davis," she croaked, her voice sounding distant through the ringing in her ears. "Davis." She rolled onto her side, agony lancing through her ribs. At least 2 were fractured, maybe more. 10 feet away she saw him. Davis lay motionless, half buried under a collapsed section of their hide. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. A boulder the size of a car tire had crushed his chest. "No," Maya whispered. "No, no, no." She crawled toward him, knowing it was futile, needing to check anyway. Her training kicked in automatically. Check for pulse, check for breathing, assess for treatment. But there was nothing to treat. Davis was gone, killed instantly. The man who'd shared his rations with her, who'd shown her pictures of his newborn daughter just yesterday, who'd watched her back through hell and high water, gone. Maya wanted to scream, to rage, to break down. But the tactical part of her brain was already taking over, cataloging injuries, assessing threats, prioritizing survival. She pulled herself away from Davis's body and fumbled for her radio with shaking hands. The radio was shattered, the casing cracked, but the receive function still worked. She could hear the chaos erupting across the net. "Multiple casualties. Compound is gone. Repeat, entire compound. Need immediate evac. Where's Hawk? Has anyone got eyes on Hawk?" "Say again." "Commander Hawkins is MIA. MIA, missing in action." Maya's blood ran cold. She dragged herself to the edge of the outcrop and retrieved her rifle, checking it frantically. Scratched and dirty but functional. She scanned the devastation below through her scope. The compound was a crater of twisted metal and burning timber. Taliban fighters were already emerging from surrounding buildings, AK-47s ready, moving toward the wreckage like vultures. She watched in horror as they found wounded SEALs in the rubble. Watched as they executed them without hesitation. Her finger tightened on the trigger, but she was too far away for effective shots in this smoke, and revealing her position would mean certain death. Then she saw it, drag marks in the dirt leading away from the main blast site. A blood trail, fresh and gleaming in the firelight, heading northeast toward the mountain foothills. Someone had survived the initial explosion and been taken, captured. More radio chatter filled her ear. "Extraction teams can't get through. Enemy reinforcements converging. Air support delayed until 6:30 hours. Dawn, they couldn't get to her until dawn, 4 hours away." Maya looked at Davis one last time, committing his face to memory. She grabbed his dog tags, slipping them around her own neck. Then she checked her gear methodically. 17 rounds for her rifle, 2 magazines for her M9 pistol, 1 fragmentation grenade, field medical kit, and a knife. Against an unknown number of enemy fighters, in hostile territory, with multiple injuries, to rescue a SEAL commander who might already be dead. Every piece of her training said to wait for extraction. Every protocol said to hold position and survive. But Maya Reeves hadn't become one of the Marine Corps elite snipers by following the safe path. And she hadn't earned the call sign, Phantom, by abandoning brothers in arms. She took one deep breath, feeling her fractured ribs protest. Then she slung her rifle, checked her compass heading, and disappeared into the darkness. The hunt was on. Maya moved through the darkness like a wraith, every step calculated, every breath controlled despite the fire in her ribs. The blood trail was easy to follow at first, thick droplets glistening in the starlight, marking a path through the rocky terrain. Whoever was bleeding had lost a lot of blood. She hoped to God it was Hawkins and that he was still alive. The adrenaline that had carried her away from the blast site was beginning to fade, replaced by waves of pain that threatened to buckle her knees. Her left arm throbbed where the laceration ran deep, the field dressing she'd applied already soaking through. Her ribs felt like broken glass grinding together with every movement. The concussion made her vision swim occasionally, forcing her to stop and steady herself against rocks. But she couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. Maya paused behind a boulder and pulled out her damaged radio, adjusting the frequency. Static crackled, Then voices emerged through the interference. Viper 2 is down, confirmed KIA. Need air support immediately. Taliban forces estimated at 40 plus. Hawk actual still missing, no visual confirmation. She recognized the voice of Lieutenant Chen, Hawkins's second in command. The man sounded devastated. The entire SEAL team had walked into a trap, a sophisticated, well-planned ambush using their own target as bait. The building had been rigged with enough explosives to level a city block. Base, this is Chen. We need that extraction now. We've got 4 wounded, 3 critical. We can't hold this position much longer. Chen base, extraction is delayed. Enemy forces have the valley locked down. Apache gunships are scrambling but won't reach your position until 6:30 hours. You need to hold. Copy that base, Chen out. 4 more hours. Maya checked her watch, 3:12 hours. The night was still young and she was running out of time. She tried to transmit, to let them know she was tracking Hawkins, but her radio's send function was completely dead. She could only listen, a ghost on the network, privy to information but unable to contribute. It was maddening. Maya pressed forward, following the trail as it wound through a narrow ravine. The terrain was treacherous, loose rocks that could turn an ankle, steep drops hidden in shadow, and 1,000 places for an ambush. She moved with her rifle up, scanning constantly. Her training had taught her to think like the enemy. Where would she set up if she wanted to kill someone moving through here? She avoided the obvious paths, taking longer routes that kept her off the skyline. Twice she froze as Taliban fighters moved along nearby trails, their voices carrying in the still mountain air. They were energized, celebrating their victory, discussing the Americans they'd killed. Maya's jaw clenched so hard it ached, but she remained still as stone. Patience, discipline, survival. After an hour of tracking, the blood trail became intermittent. Whoever was bleeding had either been bandaged or was running out of blood to lose. Neither option was good. Maya's night vision had adjusted fully, and she used her scope to scan ahead, looking for any sign of where they'd taken him. Then she saw it, a faint glow on the horizon. Not the orange of fire, but the softer yellow of oil lamps and generators. A village, nestled in the foothills about 2 kilometers northeast of her position. It made tactical sense, close enough to the ambush site to reach quickly, far enough to avoid immediate pursuit, and remote enough to be defensible. Maya found a high position and went prone, ignoring the screaming protest from her ribs. She needed reconnaissance before she could plan any kind of action. Through her scope, she began her assessment. The village was small, maybe 20 buildings clustered around a central dirt road. Most were dark, their occupants sleeping or hiding, but one compound showed activity. Toyota trucks were parked outside, the kind favored by Taliban fighters. Armed men moved in and out of a 2-story stone building. Maya counted carefully, 8 fighters visible but likely more inside. She watched their patrol patterns, noting which ones were disciplined and which were sloppy. The sloppy ones would die first. She shifted her scope to the building itself, searching window by window. Most were dark or showed only shadows. Then on the ground floor, 3rd window from the left, she saw him. Commander Jack Hawkins sat slumped against a wall, his hands bound behind his back. Even from this distance, Maya could see he was in bad shape. His face was bloodied and swollen, his uniform torn and scorched. But he was alive. His head moved slightly, tracking his captor's movements, still aware, still fighting. 2 guards stood watch over him, both armed with AK-47s. They looked alert, professional, not the young, inexperienced fighters she'd seen celebrating outside. These were veterans. Maya's tactical mind began working through the problem. 8 fighters, possibly more. Unknown layout inside the building. Hawkins wounded and bound. She had 17 rounds, limited mobility, and severe injuries. No backup. No air support. No cavalry riding to the rescue. The smart play was to maintain surveillance and wait for the rescue team at dawn. Mark the location, provide coordinates, let the professionals handle it. That's what the book said to do. But Maya knew what happened to captured American service members in Taliban hands. She'd seen the videos, read the intelligence reports. If they moved Hawkins across the border into Pakistan, he'd disappear into a black site, tortured for information and propaganda value. If they decided he wasn't worth keeping alive, they'd film his execution and spread it across the internet. Either way, by dawn, he'd be gone. She watched as more fighters emerged from the building, loading equipment into the trucks. They were preparing to move. Maya checked her watch, 3:47 hours. She had maybe 90 minutes before they transported Hawkins somewhere she couldn't follow. Her damaged radio crackled with more chatter. Chen and his team were pinned down, taking heavy fire. The rescue helicopters were delayed further, mechanical issues with one of the Apache. New ETA, 700 hours. The timeline was slipping away. Maya made her decision, not with her head but with her heart, the part of her that had sworn an oath to leave no one behind. The part that remembered every Marine Corps recruiting poster that promised Semper Fidelis, always faithful. She pulled back from her observation post and found a sheltered position behind a cluster of boulders. She needed a plan, and she needed to work fast. Maya laid out her remaining ammunition. 17 rounds for the rifle, 30 rounds across 2 pistol magazines, 1 grenade. Against 8 fighters minimum, possibly 12 or more. The numbers didn't matter. Math was for accountants. This was about will, skill, and the element of surprise. Maya began her mental preparation, the same ritual she performed before every mission. She visualized each shot, each movement, each potential complication. She calculated distances, estimated wind drift, planned firing positions, and fallback routes. She identified her primary targets, the 2 guards with Hawkins, then the perimeter sentries, then targets of opportunity. Her body screamed for rest, for medical treatment, for extraction. But Maya Reeves had stopped listening to her body's complaints a long time ago. Pain was just information. Fear was just chemistry. Death was just a possibility, not a certainty. She checked her rifle one final time, loading a fresh round into the chamber. The metallic click was satisfying, final. Through her scope, she took one more look at the village below. Hawkins was still there, still alive. Not for much longer if she didn't act. Maya settled into her firing position, controlled her breathing, and let her training take over. The hunt had led her here. Now came the hard part. Now came the killing. The sky was beginning to lighten in the east, false dawn, the last darkness before sunrise. Maya smiled grimly. Darkness was her ally. Darkness was where phantoms lived. She centered her crosshairs on the first sentry and whispered to herself, "Semper Fi, Commander, I'm coming for you." Then she squeezed the trigger. The first sentry never knew what hit him. Maya's bullet entered his skull just above the right eye, a perfect shot at 612 meters. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings, his body crumpling behind a mud brick wall. The suppressed crack of her rifle was swallowed by the mountain winds. No alarm, no shouts, just one less enemy between her and Hawkins. Maya worked the bolt smoothly, chambering another round. 16 left. She'd chosen her firing position with care, a rocky outcrop that gave her elevated sight lines over the entire village while keeping her silhouette broken up by natural terrain. The position also offered 3 escape routes if things went sideways. And things always went sideways. Through her scope, she tracked the patrol pattern she'd memorized during her reconnaissance. The Taliban fighters moved in predictable loops, which was their fatal mistake. Predictability was death in combat. Maya had learned that lesson the hard way in Helmand Province during her first deployment. Sentry number 2 was lighting a cigarette near the compound's eastern wall, his AK-47 slung carelessly over his shoulder. Amateur hour. Maya adjusted for a slight crosswind, led the target by half a body width and fired. The man's cigarette fell from his lips as he collapsed backward. The ember glowed briefly in the dirt before dying. 15 rounds. 2 down, 6 to go, Maya whispered to herself. Talking helped maintain focus, kept the concussion-induced fog at bay. Her head still pounded, and occasionally her vision would blur at the edges. She couldn't afford to lose consciousness. Not now. She scanned for the next target. A fighter stood on the roof of the main building, his silhouette clear against the lightning sky. Bad position for him, good for her. Maya calculated the elevation change, adjusted her scope accordingly, and took the shot. The man spun and fell, rolling down the sloped roof before hitting the ground with a heavy thud. 14 rounds. That's when the situation changed. A door burst open and a fighter emerged, shouting frantically. He'd found one of the bodies. The alarm was raised. Suddenly, the quiet village erupted into chaos. Men poured out of buildings, grabbing weapons, searching for threats. They knew they were under attack, but they didn't know from where or by how many. Maya let them panic. Fear was a weapon too. She watched through her scope as the fighters organized into search teams. One group headed toward the hills to the west, wrong direction. Another team stayed to guard the building where Hawkins was held. The remaining fighters spread out, trying to locate the sniper. Time for a different tactic. Maya pulled her fragmentation grenade from her vest, judging the distance to the cluster of vehicles parked near the compound. Too far for an accurate throw from here, but she didn't need to throw it. She needed to create chaos. She centered her crosshairs on the grenade in her hand, picturing the trajectory. Then she pulled the pin, counted to 2, and hurled it with everything she had toward the village. The grenade arced through the pre-dawn air, falling short of the vehicles but landing near a stack of fuel cans the fighters had been loading into a truck. Maya was already moving before it detonated. The explosion was spectacular. The fuel cans ignited in a secondary blast that sent a fireball mushrooming into the sky. The shockwave shattered windows and toppled one of the Toyota trucks onto its side. Fighters screamed, some on fire, others deafened and disoriented. 3 enemies died in the blast. 2 more were critically wounded. Maya sprinted to a new position 50 meters east, her ribs screaming, her leg nearly giving out. But she made it to a dried creek bed that provided cover and a different angle on the compound. She dropped prone and brought her rifle up just as return fire raked her previous position. Bullets sparked off rocks where she'd been seconds before. "Looking in the wrong place, boys," she muttered. Through the scope, she counted the remaining fighters. 5 still mobile, plus the 2 guards inside with Hawkins. The odds were improving, but she'd lost her element of surprise. Now they knew approximately where she was, and they were adapting. A fighter popped up from behind a wall, trying to flank her position. Maya's bullet caught him mid-stride. He went down hard. 13 rounds. Another fighter tried to use the burning vehicles as cover to advance. Maya waited patiently until he committed to his movement, then fired. The man clutched his chest and fell into the flames. 12 rounds. But her muzzle flash had given away her new position. Incoming fire intensified, forcing Maya to press herself flat against the creek bed. Bullets snapped overhead, showering her with rock chips and dust. She counted at least 3 shooters with angles on her. This position was compromised. Maya low-crawled through the creek bed, using every depression and shadow for concealment. The sky was getting lighter, false dawn giving way to the real thing. She was running out of darkness, running out of time. Once the sun was fully up, she'd lose her advantage entirely. She needed to change the dynamic, force them to react instead of hunt. Ahead, the creek bed curved around a cluster of buildings on the village's southern edge. Maya moved toward it, formulating a new plan. If she could get closer, transition from sniper to assault, she could breach the building where Hawkins was held. But that meant getting past the remaining fighters in close quarters. A shout in Pashto echoed from nearby. They were coordinating, sweeping toward her position. Maya estimated she had maybe 2 minutes before they found the creek bed. She reached a culvert that passed under the main road, a drainage tunnel just wide enough to crawl through. It was a risk. If they spotted her in there, she'd be trapped. But it would put her on the other side of their search line, closer to the target building. Maya slung her rifle across her back and entered the culvert, crawling on her belly through 6 inches of foul water. Every movement sent lightning bolts of pain through her fractured ribs. The tunnel seemed to go on forever, claustrophobic and dark. She could hear boots running overhead, voices shouting. Finally, she emerged on the other side, behind an abandoned goat pen. She was now less than 100 meters from the building where Hawkins was held, but between her and the target were 2 alert fighters scanning the area with their weapons ready. Maya checked her rifle, fouled with mud and water. She couldn't risk a shot that might misfire. She'd have to get closer. She pulled her M9 pistol and checked the chamber, clean and ready. Close quarters weapons for a close quarters fight. The 2 fighters had their backs to her, focused on the chaos across the village. Maya moved like a ghost, using the goat pen's wall for cover, closing the distance. 50 meters, 40, 30. One of the fighters turned, his eyes widening as he spotted her. Maya was faster. 2 shots sent her mass. The fighter went down. His partner spun, raising his AK-47, but Maya was already moving, closing the distance. She fired twice more. The man stumbled backward but didn't fall. He was wearing body armor. He brought his rifle to bear. Maya dove behind a stone water trough as bullets chewed up the ground where she'd been standing. She came up on the other side and fired her remaining rounds. One caught the fighter in the neck. He dropped, gurgling, his hands clutching the wound. Maya ejected the empty magazine and slammed in her last one. 15 rounds left in her pistol. 3 fighters remained outside, plus the 2 guards with Hawkins. She was close now, so close. The target building was right ahead, its thick stone walls scarred by decades of conflict. She could see the window where they held Hawkins, but the front door was barricaded, and the remaining fighters were converging on her position. She'd planned to use stealth. That option was gone. She'd hoped to eliminate threats from distance. That was impossible now. All that remained was violence of action. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and don't stop until the mission was complete or she was dead. Maya checked her gear one last time. Pistol ready, knife secured, determination absolute. The sun broke over the eastern ridge, painting the Hindu Kush in shades of gold and crimson. Dawn had arrived. Time to breach. Maya pressed her back against the stone wall of the target building, her breath coming in sharp gasps. Every inhale felt like someone was driving a spike through her chest. The fractured ribs were getting worse, grinding together with each movement. She could taste copper, blood from where she'd bitten her tongue during the crawl through the culvert. But pain was just noise. She filtered it out. Through the morning air, she could hear the remaining fighters shouting to each other in Pashto. They were confused, disorganized. They'd expected a team, not a lone operator. That confusion was her edge, and she intended to use every second of it. Maya peered around the corner of the building. The 3 remaining external fighters had taken defensive positions, one behind the overturned truck, one in a doorway across the street, and one on a rooftop with a clear view of the approach to the target building. The rooftop shooter was the immediate threat. She tilted her head back, studying the building she was pressed against. Old construction, traditional Afghan architecture. The walls were thick stone, but the exterior had decorative wooden beams jutting out at intervals. If she could climb. Maya holstered her pistol and gripped the first beam, testing its strength. It held. She began to climb, each pull-up sending white-hot agony through her ribs. Her injured arm screamed in protest, blood seeping through the bandage. But she kept moving, hand over hand, finding footholds in the irregular stonework. Halfway up, a chunk of mortar crumbled under her boot. The debris clattered down the wall. Maya froze, pressing herself flat against the stone. "Chi-she," a voice called out. What was that? Maya didn't breathe, didn't move. A shadow passed below her, one of the fighters investigating the noise. She could see the top of his head, the pattern on his pakal cap. He stood directly beneath her, scanning the area, his finger on the trigger of his AK-47. If he looked up, she was dead. The fighter muttered something, then moved on, apparently satisfied it was just a loose stone. Maya waited 10 more seconds, then continued her climb. Her arms trembled with fatigue, but she forced them to obey. At the roof line, she pulled herself up and over, rolling onto the flat roof as silently as possible. She was now on top of a building adjacent to where Hawkins was held, with a clear view of the rooftop shooter across the street. The man was focused on the ground approaches, his back partially to her. Range, approximately 40 meters. Maya drew her M9, braced her shooting hand against her knee, and took careful aim. The shot had to be perfect. If she only wounded him, his death throes might alert the others. She controlled her breathing, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Her vision narrowed to the iron sights and the target. Everything else faded away, the pain, the fear, the impossible odds. There was only the shot. Maya squeezed the trigger. The pistol cracked. The fighter on the rooftop jerked and fell forward, his weapon clattering across the tiles before tumbling to the street below. He didn't make a sound. 14 rounds left. But the gunshot had given away her position. The fighter behind the truck immediately opened fire, bullets stitching across the roofline where Maya had been. She'd already rolled away, moving to the opposite side of the roof. From her new angle, she had a clean shot at the truck, more specifically at its fuel tank. Maya aimed carefully and fired 3 rounds into the tank's underside. For a moment, nothing happened. Then fuel began gushing out, pooling beneath the vehicle. She adjusted her aim and fired at the metal, trying to create a spark. The 4th bullet did it. The fuel ignited with a whoosh, and within seconds the truck was engulfed in flames. The fighter behind it had 2 choices: burn or run. He chose to run, breaking from cover in a desperate sprint. Maya tracked him smoothly and fired twice. He went down mid-stride, sliding face first in the dirt. 10 rounds left in the pistol. 2 fighters remained outside. The explosion of the truck sent thick black smoke billowing into the morning sky. Maya used it as cover, climbing down from the roof using the same route she'd ascended. Her muscles were jelly, her hands slick with blood and sweat, but she made it to the ground. She moved through the smoke like a ghost, her pistol up and ready. The remaining 2 fighters were shouting, trying to coordinate through the chaos. One was close. She could hear his labored breathing, smell the cigarette smoke on his clothes. Maya came around a corner and found herself face to face with him at 5 meters. His eyes went wide. Both fighters raised their weapons simultaneously, but Maya was already moving. She dove left as his AK-47 chattered, bullets passing through the space where she'd been. She hit the ground hard on her injured shoulder, vision going white with pain, but her pistol never wavered. She fired from the ground, 2 shots to the chest, 1 to the head. The fighter collapsed like a marionette with cut strings. 7 rounds. The last external fighter had seen enough. Through the thinning smoke, Maya caught a glimpse of him running, not toward her but away, fleeing the village entirely. She let him go. He wasn't a threat anymore, just a scared man who'd chosen survival over martyrdom. That left only the 2 guards inside with Hawkins. Maya approached the target, building cautiously, checking corners, watching windows. The front door was heavy wood reinforced with metal. She could see where they'd barricaded it from inside. Breaching it would be loud, time-consuming, and probably fatal. She circled the building, looking for alternatives. The windows were too small and too high. The walls were solid stone. But as she moved around the back, she spotted something. A wooden exterior staircase leading to the second floor, half collapsed and probably unused for years. More importantly, she saw a ventilation gap in the wall near the roof line, a space left open for air circulation in the summer heat. It was barely 2 feet square, but Maya had squeezed through tighter spaces in training. She tested the first step of the rickety staircase. It held barely. The second step cracked ominously under her weight but didn't break. Maya climbed carefully, testing each step, ready to jump clear if the whole structure collapsed. At the top, she found herself at the second floor level with access to the ventilation gap. From inside, she could hear voices, one of the guards talking, the words muffled but aggressive in tone. She heard a thud, followed by a pained grunt she recognized as Hawkins's voice. They were beating him. Maya's jaw clenched, not for much longer. She peered through the gap into the dark interior. It took a moment for her eyes to adjust. She was looking down into what appeared to be a storage room filled with old furniture and crates. More importantly, she could see a doorway that led to the front room, where they were holding Hawkins. The gap was tight, but it was her only option. Maya removed her tactical vest, too bulky to fit through, and placed it on the roof along with her rifle. She kept her pistol, knife, and one last trick, her flashbang grenade, saved for an emergency. This qualified. Maya squeezed through the ventilation gap feet first, scraping her shoulders raw against the rough stone. For a heart-stopping moment, she thought she was stuck, wedged in the opening like a cork in a bottle. Then something tore her uniform, and she dropped through, landing hard on a pile of old rugs. The impact drove the air from her lungs. She lay there gasping, every nerve screaming, willing herself not to pass out. She could hear the guards more clearly now, their voices coming from the next room. "Americans will come for him. We should kill him now." "No, the commander wants him alive for the video. It will be good propaganda." A third voice, weak but defiant: "Hawkins, you boys better hope the Marines don't find you. When they do, I'll be there to watch." One of the guards laughed and hit him again. Maya forced herself to her feet, drawing her pistol with her right hand and pulling the flashbang with her left. She moved to the doorway, staying low, and risked a quick peek around the corner. The room was exactly as she'd seen through her scope: rectangular, stone walls, minimal furniture. Hawkins sat against the far wall, hands bound behind his back, his face a mask of bruises and blood. But his eyes were alert, dangerous. He was still fighting. 2 guards stood over him. Both had pistols holstered at their sides, but their AK-47s were leaning against the wall, close, but not in hand. They felt safe in their fortress. They were wrong. Maya pulled the pin on the flashbang and let the spoon fly free. She counted: 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, then rolled it into the room like a bowling ball. The guards had less than a second to register the small canister bouncing toward them. Their eyes went wide. Then the world turned to white thunder. The flashbang detonated with a thunderous crack that shook dust from the ceiling. Even in the adjacent room, with her eyes closed and hands over her ears, Maya felt the concussive pressure wave. For the guard standing directly over the grenade, it was catastrophic. Maya moved before the echo faded. She came through the doorway low and fast, her M9 pistol extended. The 2 guards were stumbling, hands clutching their faces, temporarily blind and deaf. Their training screamed at them to fight, but their bodies wouldn't cooperate. One guard fumbled for his holstered pistol. The other lurched toward his AK-47, leaning against the wall. Maya shot the first guard twice, center mass, textbook. He crumpled without a sound. The second guard managed to grip his rifle, swinging it around despite his temporary blindness. Maya adjusted her aim and fired. The bullet caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He fell but didn't stay down, crawling desperately toward the weapon he'd dropped. She closed the distance and kicked the rifle away, then placed a final round through the back of his skull. 4 rounds left. The room fell silent except for the ringing in Maya's ears and Hawkins's ragged breathing. She turned to face him, and their eyes met. "Staff Sergeant Maya Reeves, Marine Scout Sniper," she said, her voice hoarse. "Call sign Phantom. I'm getting you out of here, Commander." Hawkins stared at her like she was a ghost. Blood trickled from his nose and ears, effects of the blast that had destroyed the compound. His left leg was twisted at an unnatural angle, clearly broken. Burns covered his arms and his tactical vest was shredded, but his eyes were sharp, aware. "You came alone," he rasped. "Didn't have much choice, sir." Maya holstered her pistol and pulled out her knife, moving behind him to cut the zip ties binding his wrists. "Extractions delayed. You were being moved. Couldn't wait." The zip ties parted under her blade. Hawkins brought his hands around, wincing as circulation returned. "My team." Maya hesitated. She'd heard the radio chatter. Chen and 3 others made it out. They're holding a defensive position 2 clicks south. The rest, she didn't need to finish. Hawkins closed his eyes briefly, processing the loss. When he opened them again, they were hard as flint. "Then we don't waste their sacrifice. Help me up." "Sir, your leg." "I know my leg's broken, Staff Sergeant. Help me up anyway." Maya moved to his side and carefully helped him stand, taking most of his weight. Hawkins bit back a scream as he put pressure on the shattered leg, his face going white. Sweat beaded on his forehead. "I need to stabilize that," Maya said, easing him back down. She pulled out her medical kit, what was left of it, and began fashioning a field splint using pieces of broken furniture and medical tape. Her hands worked automatically, years of combat lifesaver training taking over. 8 fighters outside," Hawkins said through gritted teeth as she worked. "Maybe more in the village. You take them all out." "Most of them. 3 left when I started the fireworks." Maya secured the splint tightly, drawing another hiss of pain from Hawkins. "But more will be coming. This much noise doesn't go unnoticed." She pulled out a syringe of morphine from her kit and jabbed it into Hawkins's thigh. He didn't even flinch. After a moment, his breathing eased slightly as the drug took effect. "Can you walk?" she asked. "I can hop. You got a spare rifle." Maya gestured to the guards' AK-47s. "Take your pick." Hawkins grabbed the nearest rifle, checked the magazine, half full and chambered a round. Despite his injuries, he handled the weapon with practiced ease. "What's the extraction plan?" "Working on it," Maya admitted. She moved to the window and carefully peered out. The burning truck was still sending up a column of black smoke. Bodies lay scattered in the street. But in the distance, she could see movement, vehicles approaching from the west, reinforcements drawn by the battle. "We've got maybe 5 minutes before this village is crawling with Taliban," she said. "We need to move north, get to higher ground where the helicopters can extract us." "How far?" 2 kilometers, through open terrain. Hawkins laughed, a sound without humor. "With me hopping on one leg and you looking like you went 10 rounds with a grizzly bear, this should be interesting." Maya looked down at herself. Her uniform was torn and blood-soaked, her left arm still bleeding through the bandage. Her ribs sent lightning bolts of pain with every breath. She'd lost track of how many times she'd been hit, grazed, or thrown against something hard. But she was still standing, still fighting. "Stay close to me, Commander," she said, helping him up again. "We're leaving." They made it to the doorway before the first problem hit, literally. Maya's vision swam suddenly, the room tilting at a crazy angle. The concussion was catching up with her. She stumbled, nearly dropping Hawkins. "Whoa, easy," Hawkins said, steadying her with his free arm. "When's the last time you had water?" Maya couldn't remember. She fumbled for her canteen empty. She drained it hours ago trekking through the mountains. Hawkins pulled his own canteen from his belt and pressed it into her hands. "Drink. I need you conscious, Marine." Maya drank gratefully, the warm water tasting like salvation. It helped clear her head slightly. "Thanks, sir." Save it for when we're out of here. Now let's move. They emerged from the building into early morning sunlight. The village looked like a war zone, which Maya supposed it was. Smoke drifted across the street. The sweet-sick smell of burning fuel and flesh hung in the air. Maya scanned for threats, her pistol in her right hand while her left supported Hawkins. They moved slowly, painfully, Hawkins hopping on his good leg while leaning heavily on Maya's shoulder. Every few steps, he had to pause to breathe through the pain. They made it 50 meters before the shooting started. Bullets cracked past them, kicking up dust. Maya spotted the shooter, a Taliban fighter emerging from a building to their right, his rifle chattering on full auto. She returned fire with her pistol, 3 quick shots. The fighter ducked back into cover. 3 rounds, 1 left. Contact right, Hawkins shouted, swinging his AK-47 around and firing a burst that stitched across the building's facade. The fighter didn't reappear. They kept moving, faster now despite the pain. Adrenaline was a hell of a drug. They reached the edge of the village, stumbling into an open field that sloped upward toward a rocky ridgeline. 2 kilometers, might as well have been 200. Behind them, engines roared. The reinforcements were entering the village. Shouts echoed. They'd found the bodies, found the destroyed building. "They're coming," Hawkins said unnecessarily. Maya's radio suddenly crackled to life, the receive function still working. "All units, this is Viper 1-1. We have Apache gunships inbound to grid 42 SXD 82345677. ETA 10 minutes. 10 minutes. They had 10 minutes to cover 2 kilometers while wounded and pursued. Maya looked at the ridgeline, then at Hawkins, then back at the village where Taliban fighters were mounting vehicles, preparing to hunt them down. The math didn't work. They wouldn't make it. Unless... "Commander," Maya said, an idea forming. "How good of a shot are you with that AK?" Hawkins managed a pained grin. "I didn't make SEAL Team 7 by missing. Why?" "Because I've got 1 round left in my pistol. You've got maybe 20 in that rifle. And I'm about to do something really stupid to buy us time." "I'm listening." Maya scanned the terrain. About 100 meters ahead was a small irrigation ditch, deep enough for concealment. Beyond that, scattered boulders offered cover, if they could reach those positions. "We're not running from them anymore," Maya said. "We're going to make them come to us, and when they do, we're going to make them pay for every meter." Hawkins studied her face, saw the determination there despite the pain and exhaustion. "You know they'll surround us, pin us down. We could just keep moving, hope the Apache arrive in time." "Hope isn't a strategy, sir." "No," Hawkins agreed, checking his rifle's magazine. "It's not. All right, Staff Sergeant, you've kept me alive this long. What's the plan?" Maya pointed to the irrigation ditch. "We ford up there, controlled fields of fire. When they come, and they will come, we hit them hard enough to make them think twice. Slow them down until air support arrives. And if the Apache don't make it in time..." Maya met his eyes. "Then we make our last stand count for something." Hawkins nodded slowly. "Semper Fi Marine." "Hoorah, Commander. Now let's go kill some bad guys." They moved toward the irrigation ditch. 2 wounded warriors against an army, betting everything on 10 minutes and the hope that help would arrive before the end. Behind them, engines roared and men shouted for blood. The race against dawn had become a race against death itself. Maya and Hawkins half ran, half stumbled toward the irrigation ditch, every second expecting bullets to tear through their backs. The morning sun was fully up now, exposing them against the barren landscape. They were completely in the open, 2 wounded targets moving at a crawl. 50 meters from the ditch, the first vehicle burst from the village, a Toyota pickup with a mounted machine gun in the bed. The gunner opened fire immediately, heavy caliber rounds chewing up the earth around them. "Go, go, go," Maya shouted, practically dragging Hawkins now. They dove into the irrigation ditch just as the machine gun fire tracked across their position. Maya landed hard on her injured ribs, the impact driving the air from her lungs. Stars exploded across her vision. For a moment, she thought she'd pass out. Hawkins grabbed her shoulder, shaking her. "Stay with me, Reeves." Maya gasped, forcing oxygen into her lungs, willing herself to focus. The ditch was about 4 feet deep and 3 feet wide, not much, but enough to provide cover from direct fire. The earthen walls were packed hard, stable enough to fight from. She pulled herself up to the lip of the ditch and risked a look. 3 vehicles now, 2 pickups and a SUV, were racing across the field toward their position. She counted at least 15 fighters. "Multiple targets, 3 o'clock," she called to Hawkins. "Range approximately 300 meters and closing." Hawkins positioned himself on the opposite side of the ditch, using the earth as a brace for his AK-47. Despite his broken leg and the morphine in his system, his hands were steady. "I've got the vehicle on the left. You take the right." Maya drew her M9 pistol, 1 round left. Not nearly enough. She grabbed one of the dead guard's pistols from her belt, a Makarov she'd taken from the building. 8 rounds, maybe 9. Still not enough, but it would have to do. The vehicles spread out as they approached, trying to flank the ditch from multiple angles. Smart tactics. They weren't just charging in blindly. At 200 meters, Hawkins opened fire. His burst stitched across the hood of the left pickup, and the vehicle swerved violently. The driver slumped over the wheel and the truck careened into a boulder, flipping spectacularly. Fighters tumbled from the bed, several not getting up. "Good shooting," Maya shouted. The other vehicles stopped at 150 meters, outside effective pistol range but well within rifle range. Fighters piled out, using the vehicles for cover, laying down suppressive fire. Bullets cracked overhead, forcing Maya and Hawkins to stay low. "They're setting up a base of fire," Hawkins observed. "They'll pin us down while another team flanks." He was right. Maya spotted movement on their left, 4 fighters using a small rise in the terrain to move around their position. If they got behind the ditch, it was over. "I've got the flankers," Maya said, scrambling to the other end of their position. She steadied the Makarov against the ditch wall and waited. Patience. Let them commit. The flankers moved in pairs, using tactical movement, one team advancing while the other covered. They were well-trained, disciplined. When they were 70 meters out, Maya opened fire. The Makarov bucked in her hand, different recoil than her M9, unfamiliar trigger pull. Her first 2 shots went wide. She adjusted, controlled her breathing despite the pain, and fired again. The lead flanker went down. His partner dove for cover behind a rock. Maya put 2 more rounds into the rock, keeping him pinned. The second pair of flankers split up, trying to widen the angle. Maya's slide locked back. Empty. 8 rounds gone, 1 enemy down, 3 still advancing. She dropped the Makarov and drew her M9, 1 precious round. 1 shot had to count. She tracked the nearest flanker as he sprinted between cover positions. Led him. Squeezed. The pistol cracked. The fighter's leg buckled and he went down, screaming, clutching his thigh. Not a kill shot, but he was out of the fight. Maya's slide locked back. No more ammunition for her pistols. "Hawkins, I'm Winchester on pistols." "Here." Hawkins tossed her one of the dead guard's AK-47s from the building. Maya caught it, checked the magazine. Half full, maybe 15 rounds, and turned back to the flankers. The remaining 2 had gone to ground, pinned by her fire but not eliminated. Meanwhile, the main group at the vehicles was preparing to assault. She could see them staging, working up their courage. Her radio crackled. "Viper 1-1 to any friendly units in Grid 42, SXD 82345677. We are 5 minutes out. Authenticate, over." 5 minutes. 5 more minutes of holding this position against 15+ fighters with limited ammunition and 2 wounded operators. Maya keyed her damaged radio, praying the transmission would work. Viper 1-1, this is Phantom. Too friendly, multiple hostiles, danger close. Static then, copy Phantom, can't read, repeat, repeat. The transmission cut out. She didn't know if they'd heard her, didn't know if they understood the situation. They coming or not? Hawkins shouted, firing another burst at the vehicles. 5 minutes maybe. Then we hold for 5 minutes. The Taliban fighters chose that moment to assault. 10 of them broke from cover simultaneously, spreading out in a ragged line, firing as they advanced. The remaining fighters at the vehicles provided suppressing fire, a wall of lead that forced Maya and Hawkins to hug the bottom of the ditch. Contact front, Maya yelled unnecessarily. She popped up and fired a quick burst, dropped back down as return fire cracked overhead. She'd hit one, maybe two. Hawkins was firing methodically, short, controlled bursts. Another attacker fell, then another, but they kept coming, accepting casualties, determined to overrun the position. 50 meters out, the attackers were screaming now, working themselves into a frenzy. Maya and Hawkins fought back-to-back in the narrow ditch, their rifles barking, brass casings flying. Maya's AK-47 ran dry. She dropped it and grabbed a rock, absurdly inadequate but all she had left. Hawkins fired his last rounds and threw the empty rifle aside. He pulled his combat knife. "Well," he said, breathing hard, "it's been an honor, Staff Sergeant." Maya pulled her own knife, her vision tunneling, preparing for the final rush. "Likewise, Commander." The attackers were 30 meters out, 20. She could see their faces, see the murder in their eyes. Then the world erupted. Apache gunships came screaming over the ridgeline like avenging angels, their 30-chain guns roaring. The heavy rounds tore through the attacking fighters like a scythe through wheat. Bodies exploded. The earth itself seemed to come apart under the onslaught. The fighters who weren't killed in the first pass broke and ran, all cohesion lost, every man for himself. The Apache hunted them mercilessly, rockets and cannon fire turning the battlefield into hell on earth. Behind the Apache came a Black Hawk, flaring hard and settling into a hover 50 meters from the ditch. The crew chief waved frantically from the open door. "That's our ride," Hawkins shouted over the roar of rotors. Maya helped him up and they scrambled out of the ditch. The 50 meters to the helicopter seemed like 50 miles. Every step was agony. Maya's vision was fading at the edges. She'd lost too much blood, taken too much punishment. Her body was shutting down. She stumbled. Hawkins caught her, and now he was supporting her as much as she was supporting him. Two broken warriors holding each other up. "Almost there," Hawkins said. "Don't you dare quit on me now, Marine." 20 meters, 10. Hands reached out from the helicopter, Navy corpsmen pulling them aboard. Maya collapsed onto the deck, every muscle giving out at once. Someone was cutting away her uniform, assessing her injuries, shouting medical jargon she couldn't process. The Black Hawk lifted off, banking hard. Through the open door, Maya could see the irrigation ditch where they'd made their stand, the bodies scattered across the field, the burning vehicles, all of it receding as they climbed. A corpsman leaned over her, his face concerned. "Stay with us, Staff Sergeant, you're going home." Home? The word seemed foreign, impossible. She'd been in combat mode for so long she'd forgotten anything else existed. "Hawkins," she managed to say. "Right here," the commander's voice came from beside her. He was on another stretcher, an IV already running into his arm. His face was gray with pain and blood loss, but he was alive. "We made it, Reeves. We actually made it." Maya tried to smile but wasn't sure if her face cooperated. The helicopter's vibrations seemed to be coming from far away. The voices around her were fading. Losing her pressure. "Get another line in." "Stay with us, Marine." But Maya was already slipping away, consciousness sliding away like water through her fingers. Her last thought before the darkness took her was simple, crystalline. Mission complete. Secure. Maya drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of fragments. The rhythmic thump of helicopter rotors, voices shouting medical terms, hands working on her body, pain that came in waves like an angry ocean. BP's dropping. She's going into shock. Commander Hawkins is stable for now, but the female. I need more gauze. She's bleeding through. Someone slapped her face lightly. Staff Sergeant Reeves, stay with me. Open your eyes. Maya forced her eyes open. The corpsman's face swam into focus above her, young and intense, his hands red with her blood. Behind him, medical equipment swayed with the helicopter's movement. An IV bag hung from a hook, clear fluid running into her arm. There you are, the corpsman said, relief evident in his voice. You scared us for a minute. I'm Doc Anderson. You're going to be okay, but I need you to stay awake. Can you do that for me? Maya tried to speak, but her mouth was too dry. Anderson held a water bottle to her lips, and she managed a few sips. Hawkins, she croaked. Commander Hawkins is stable, Anderson assured her. Broken leg, some internal bleeding, severe concussion, but he'll make it, thanks to you. He was working as he talked, applying pressure to her arm wound. Now let me worry about you for a minute. You've got a laceration on your left arm that needs immediate suturing, at least 2 fractured ribs, possible internal bleeding, severe concussion, a through-and-through gunshot wound in your thigh I somehow missed initially, and you've lost about 2 units of blood. You should be dead, Staff Sergeant. Sorry to disappoint, Maya managed. Anderson laughed despite the situation. Marines, you're all crazy. He called over his shoulder, how far to Bagram? The crew chief shouted back, 15 minutes. Weather's clear, we've got priority landing. Hear that, Anderson said to Maya. 15 minutes to a real hospital with real doctors and real equipment. All you have to do is stay conscious for 15 more minutes. Think you can manage that? Maya wanted to say yes, but the darkness was creeping in at the edges of her vision again. Her body had been running on adrenaline and willpower for hours, and both reserves were depleted. The pain was becoming distant, which she knew was a bad sign. Hey, Anderson snapped his fingers in front of her face. Talk to me, tell me something, anything. Where are you from? Colorado, Maya whispered. Denver. Yeah, I'm from Boulder, small world. You got family there. Mom, sister. Maya's thoughts were fragmenting. She saw her mother's face, remembered the last phone call before this deployment. Her mom had been worried, asking her to be careful. Maya had promised she would be. Some promise. What about you? Anderson pressed, keeping her talking. Why'd you join the Marines? Maya's mind drifted back 7 years to a high school guidance counselor's office. She'd been 18, angry, directionless. The recruiter had shown her a path, a purpose. The Marines had given her discipline, taught her skills, forged her into a weapon. Wanted to matter, she said. Wanted to do something that counted. Well, you sure as hell did that today, Anderson said. You saved a SEAL commander's life. Took out an entire Taliban cell by yourself. That's going to count for a long time, Staff Sergeant. Across the helicopter, Hawkins had regained consciousness. Despite his own injuries and the morphine, he turned his head toward Maya. Their eyes met. Reeves, he said, his voice barely audible over the rotors. Don't you dare die on me. That's an order. Maya tried to smile. Yes, sir. I mean it, Hawkins insisted, and there was something fierce in his expression. You don't get to pull off the most badass rescue I've ever seen and then check out before the paperwork. I've got about 100 forms to fill out, and I need you alive to corroborate my story. Nobody's going to believe one operator took down 8 fighters solo. 11, Maya corrected weakly, was 11 total. See, Hawkins said to Anderson, she's too stubborn to die. Marines always are. The helicopter banked, beginning its descent. Through the open door, Maya could see Bagram Airfield spread out below. the largest U.S. military base in Afghanistan, with its massive runways, rows of buildings, and organized chaos of military operations. Home base, safety, medical care. She'd made it. They'd made it. 2 minutes, the pilot called back. Anderson was still working on Maya, his hands quick and efficient. He'd managed to slow the bleeding, stabilize her vitals enough to get her to the hospital. But his face was tight with concern. She'd seen that look before, the expression of a medic who knew his patient was balancing on a knife's edge. The Black Hawk touched down on the helipad with barely a jolt. Before the skids fully settled, a trauma team was rushing toward them. Doctors, nurses, specialists, all running with gurneys and equipment. The next few minutes were a blur of motion. Maya was transferred from the helicopter to a gurney, then wheeled rapidly across the tarmac toward a building marked with a massive red cross. Hawkins was on another gurney beside her, both of them being rushed to emergency surgery. Someone was shining a light in Maya's eyes, checking her pupils. Someone else was cutting away the rest of her uniform. Voices overlapped. Prep or 2, we've got a GSW and severe hemorrhaging. Type and crossmatch, we'll need at least 4 units. Get surgery on standby. BP stabilizing, but she's still critical. They burst through double doors into the hospital. The fluorescent lights were painfully bright after the darkness of the helicopter. Maya's gurney hit something, a door frame, maybe, and the jolt sent a fresh wave of pain through her body. A female doctor appeared above her, African-American, maybe 40, with kind eyes and an air of absolute competence. Her name tag read, MAJ, WLLIMS. Staff Sergeant Reeves, I'm Major Williams and I'm going to be your surgeon, she said calmly. You've had quite a morning, but you're safe now. We're going to take good care of you. Do you understand? Maya nodded weakly. Good, we're taking you to surgery right now to stop the bleeding and repair the damage. You're going to be just fine. I promise you that. Williams looked at someone Maya couldn't see. Let's get her prepped, and somebody find out who this warrior is and make sure her family knows she's alive. The gurney turned a corner, entering a pre-op area. A nurse with a syringe approached. This is going to help you relax, she said gently. Maya felt the medication enter her IV line, felt warmth spreading through her veins. The pain began to recede, replaced by a floating sensation. Her thoughts became softer, less urgent. In the next bay, she could hear Hawkins talking to his own medical team, his voice stronger now. I want a full report on Staff Sergeant Reeves's condition. That Marine saved my life. Anything she needs, anything at all, you make it happen. That's not a request. Yes, Commander, came the reply. Maya smiled. Even half dead and heading into surgery, Hawkins was still giving orders. That was a good sign. He'd be okay. They'd both be okay. The ceiling tiles passed overhead as they wheeled her toward the operating room. Maya counted them, a meditative exercise to stay grounded. 1, 2, 3. A face appeared above her, Anderson, the corpsman from the helicopter. He'd followed them in. Hey, Marine, he said, grinning. You made it to Bagram. Told you could hang on for 15 minutes. Thanks, Doc, Maya whispered. No, thank you. What you did out there, he shook his head. That's the stuff of legends. The whole base is talking about it. The female Marine sniper who took on an army to save a SEAL commander. Just did my job. No, Anderson said seriously. You did a hell of a lot more than that. You're a hero, Staff Sergeant Reeves. Own it. The surgical doors opened ahead. Major Williams was already scrubbed and ready, her team assembled. All right, Maya, Williams said, switching to her first name now. Time to sleep. When you wake up, this will all be over. We've got you. The anesthesiologist placed a mask over Maya's face. Count backward from 10 for me. 10, 9, 8. Maya's last conscious thought was of Davis, her spotter, her friend. She'd survived. She'd completed the mission. She'd brought Hawkins home. but Davis was still gone. 7-6. The tears came then, silent and unbidden. 5-4. She'd tell his daughter about him someday. Tell her that her father was brave, that he died doing something that mattered. 3. Darkness rose up like a warm tide. 2. Somewhere far away, voices called her back. But Maya let go, trusting the doctors, trusting the process. 1. Secure, 3 weeks later, Maya sat in a hospital bed at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany, staring out the window at gray November skies. The pain had become manageable now, dulled by medication and the slow process of healing. Her left arm was stitched and bandaged, the laceration requiring 42 sutures. Her ribs were wrapped tightly, each breath still a reminder of what she'd endured. The gunshot wound in her thigh had been through and through, missing the femoral artery by less than an inch. Lucky, the surgeon said. Blessed, her mother said during their daily video calls. Maya didn't feel lucky or blessed, she felt hollow. The nightmares came every night without fail. She'd wake up gasping, back in that sniper hide with Davis beside her, watching the compound explode again and again. Sometimes in the dreams she could save him, pull him clear of the falling rocks, drag him to safety. But she always woke before finding out if it worked, the hope dissolving into the reality of his empty chair at breakfast, his locker being cleared out, his daughter growing up without a father. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Come in, Maya called, expecting another nurse with more medication or another physical therapist ready to torture her healing body. Instead, Commander Jack Hawkins wheeled himself through the door. He looked better than the last time she'd seen him, cleaned up, the swelling in his face reduced, the burns on his arms bandaged properly. His leg was in a full cast, elevated in the wheelchair's leg rest, but his eyes were clear, alert, alive. Commander, Maya said, sitting up straighter despite the protest from her ribs. Sir, you shouldn't be out of bed. Neither should you, and yet here we are, Hawkins interrupted, wheeling himself to her bedside. How are you feeling, Staff Sergeant? Like I got hit by a truck, sir, you. Like I got blown up by a building, he smiled slightly, so about the same. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, two warriors who'd seen each other at their worst, who'd bled together, fought together, survived together. Words seemed inadequate. Finally Hawkins spoke. I wanted to thank you properly for what you did. Maya shook her head. You don't need to thank me, I was just. Don't say you were just doing your job, Hawkins cut her off. What you did went so far beyond duty it's not even in the same universe. You tracked me alone through hostile territory, eliminated 11 enemy fighters while severely wounded, breached a fortified position, extracted me under fire, and held off an assault until air support arrived. That's not just a job. That's something else entirely. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Opening it, he revealed a sealed trident pin, the iconic insignia of naval special warfare, the symbol worn by only the most elite warriors in the military. The team wanted me to give you this, Hawkins said quietly. It's honorary, you earned it, Marine. You're one of us now. Maya stared at the trident, her vision blurring with tears. She'd spent her entire career proving herself, fighting for respect in a male-dominated field, earning every inch of recognition through blood and sweat. But this was different. This wasn't recognition from strangers or superiors. This was family accepting her as one of their own. Sir, I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept it. Say you'll remember that SEAL Team 7 owes you a debt we can never repay. You brought their commander home. You gave me back to my wife and kids. That means everything. Maya took the pin with trembling hands, running her thumb over the eagle clutching the trident. What about Davis? She asked, her voice breaking. What about the SEALs who didn't make it? Hawkins's expression became solemn. We honor them by living, by being worthy of their sacrifice. Davis died doing his duty, protecting you so you could protect others. The SEALs died trying to take down a terrorist who killed children. Those deaths meant something, Reeves. Don't dishonor them by carrying guilt that isn't yours to bear. But if I'd seen the trap sooner, you'd have died in the blast with the rest of us, Hawkins said firmly. There was no seeing that trap. It was too well hidden, too perfectly timed. This is war. People die. Good people, the best people. That's the reality we live with. But you know what else is reality? You saved a life that night. You completed an impossible mission. You showed courage that will be talked about for generations. Focus on that. Maya wiped her eyes, nodding. It would take time to accept that, maybe years, maybe forever. But hearing it from Hawkins helped. There's something else, Hawkins continued. He pulled out a folded letter and handed it to her. This is from the team. Every member who made it out signed it. Maya unfolded the letter with shaking hands. The handwriting varied, some neat, some barely legible, but the message was clear. Staff Sergeant Maya Reeves, you brought our commander home when we couldn't. You fought alone against impossible odds and never quit. You proved that courage has no gender, no branch, no limits except those we place on ourselves. You are our sister now. You are family. If you ever need anything, anything at all, you call us. We will come. No questions, no hesitation. Semper Fi, Huya, thank you. Below were signatures. Chen, Rodriguez, Martinez, Washington. The survivors of SEAL Team 7, each name a reminder of who made it and who didn't. They mean it, Hawkins said. Every word, your family now. A nurse appeared at the door. Commander Hawkins, you need to get back to your room. Doctor's orders. Hawkins nodded, but before leaving, he clasped Maya's hand. One more thing. You're being recommended for the Navy Cross. It'll take time to process, but it's happening. Admiral Chang himself is pushing it through. The Navy Cross, the second highest military decoration for valor, behind only the Medal of Honor. I don't deserve. Yes, you do, Hawkins said simply. Own it, Marine, you earned it. After he left, Maya sat holding the trident pin and the letter, reading the names over and over. Her phone buzzed, a text from her mother asking about her day. Maya smiled and typed a response, promising she was okay, that she'd be home soon. Home, the word carried new weight now. She looked out the window again, but this time she saw more than gray skis. She saw possibility. She saw tomorrow. She'd carry Davis with her, carry all of them who didn't make it. Their memory would make her better, stronger, more determined to honor their sacrifice. Maya Reeves had gone into the Hindu Kush Mountains as a sniper. She'd emerged as something more, a warrior who'd proven that the only limitations that mattered were the ones you accepted. She'd faced impossible odds and refused to break. The nightmares would come again tonight. The pain would persist. The scars, physical and emotional, would remain. But so would the pride. The knowledge that when everything went wrong, when the mission seemed lost, when the book said to quit, she hadn't. She'd adapted, improvised, and overcome. She'd completed the mission. She'd brought him home. Secure. Maya pinned the trident to her hospital gown, feeling its weight against her heart. Tomorrow she'd start physical therapy again. Next week she'd begin the long journey back to full duty. Eventually, she'd deploy again, return to the fight. But tonight she'd rest. She'd earned that much. Outside, the sun broke through the German clouds, casting golden light across the hospital room. Maya closed her eyes and, for the first time in weeks, felt something like peace. The war wasn't over, her battles weren't finished, but she'd won this one. And that was enough. The end.
Adesso non riesco però. Aspetta. Facciamo così. È così. Ok, ce l'abbiamo. Adesso stai qui. Vai su. Ci vediamo dopo. Ho capito. Devo salire con lui. Ho voglia di gente provarci con il tavolino di cristallo senza conoscere il trick e buttare tavolini che costano l'ira di Dio.